Hi friends, we're starting a new training cycle in all of our online training programs. If you want to become a training think tank athlete, watch the rest of this video where our coaches will break down all of the different training paths for that new cycle starting on June 27th.
Come on, just be better than that.
Hello friends. In this video, we're going to talk about all of our TTT athlete online programs. We're going to start first with our competitive programs, which is RX, Intermediate, Masters, and Elite.
And a surprise.
And a
for
surprise
this one.
new path that we have going.
I guess, yeah, that is a surprise.
It is a surprise.
Right?
We're going to talk about it in a second. If you're not interested in those programs and you are interested in our fitness programs, which would be bodybuilding, 60, endurance, and movement and mobility paths, we'll talk about that at the end of this video.
Nailed it.
Yes. 17th try.
All right, so the season, well, for most people, the season's over.
Yeah.
The season, I feel like, is starting to get more stressful now. We only have last chance qualifier and the games left, so there's a very small number of people still in the game, but
I feel like we're over the hump,
yeah.
but there's still so much left.
Yeah. I mean, it is a busy time of the year, but it's also a good time for us to start to reflect as coaches and see what we've done well, what we've done poorly, and hopefully learn and grow from that. Just like we tell all of our athletes to learn and grow. I think one of the cool things just within like our competitive programs, I would brag on Mia for a little bit here, is like seeing how many people, especially in the open time, because we didn't really touch on this, that didn't have muscle ups, didn't have handstand walking, couldn't do a wall walk, all those things that were tested, and then they crushed those open workouts.
Yeah.
And having a dedicated intermediate path where it's like Mia's writing specific progressions for those things to get you from that scaled or intermediate athlete to an RX athlete is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's hard to find a program out there that caters to both, right? So we've got intermediate athletes that come in that want to develop skills, whether they have like no ring muscle ups or handstand push-ups, or some that come in and just want to like actually improve their capacity. And then we've got athletes that do the program that are bubble level, semifinal athletes, games level athletes, and we cater to all of them specifically, you know, with different divisions. So I think it's been a good process and system that we've created to where we can actually like help all of those levels develop over time.
Yeah, I got some feedback from somebody that trains at a gym and follows our program and has, you know, in the gym, it has like little sects of like people that follow TTT clicks, not sex, SECTS or whatever,
Yeah.
but it sounded like sex. They have sex inside the gym.
Normal CrossFit gym.
Okay, sorry.
Listen.
Got him.
Yeah, got them. So they have different people that follow the different programs, and some people jumped into the intermediate program and stuck with the progressions, whereas others were like, oh, it's boring to do the fundamentals. We'd rather just do a workout and scale it. But the problem with like scaling high level gymnastics stuff into like
It leads you nowhere.
yeah, you literally never develop the skill. So now, after months of development, they go into the seasons, make quarterfinals, and actually can do those skills. And it was like, I don't know, it's just nice. Normally, I'm only talking to the elites that are like, you know, trying to get from 10th at the games to 5th at the games. And it's this like tiny little segment of the population. But now people are coming up, and I don't know, it's just cool to hear that people are making a lot of progress in their, you know, in their base fundamental development time.
Yeah, I mean, that gap from being a bubble to a semifinal athlete is very difficult to change. And we had a lot of people this year, I'll say, punch their semifinal ticket, right?
Yeah.
So we were super proud of that part of the program, and like having a lot of like rookie semifinalists make it there and actually perform really well.
Yeah.
So I was pumped.
Mia,
we got
you
one
were
more to
about
go.
to say something.
One more week to go.
I was, but this would be going back to intermediate. I was just going to say something different about the intermediate path compared to, and I could be wrong, but any other program that I've seen is there are plenty of get your first bar muscle up, get your first handstand walk programs out there, which are great. But the issue that I used to have when I was at that level of development and that I see other athletes have is most people are not educated enough to know how to fit that into a program.
Yeah.
So those programs, even though like the 12-week to bar muscle up may be great, a lot of times they're layering that in with doing, you know,
They got Cindy as part of the Metcon later on.
Too many other things in training that are hindering it. So the intermediate path takes all of those progressions and tells you exactly when to do them, and then modifies or makes Metcons harder, really, by taking out other gymnastics.
It also trains multiple of those foundational skills together, as opposed to just, you know, if you go on a bar muscle up program for 6 months and do it 3 times a week, you'll probably get a bar muscle up, but you probably won't get a ring muscle up or refine your toes to bar and your chest to bar and your handstand walking. So it's hard to make it fully comprehensive to say, hey, I'm at this level and I want all of these skills at this level. It's like, okay, well, here's a program that just covers all of those bases and you do it continuously in something that kind of makes sense as a big picture.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer for someone that needs to get better at those skills if they're limited by them in certain workouts. Where I like to see them or use them a lot with more advanced athletes too is when they've had periods of time where they're starting to kind of like reach their ceiling of development, where no longer is intensity and volume working to get better at those skills. So we'll kind of like back up a little bit and do some of the drills really often, and it's just a good change of pace instead of like, all right, here's another super hard EMOM doing as many reps as you can get. You know, it's like actually drills and creating shapes and getting better at the movements.
Yeah. So I would just, I'm going to brag on Mia a little bit because she's the one that's writing that program. But just in general, I think our methodology, the way that we think about training is we're not just trying to get elite athletes better. We're trying to get everyone better. We're a developmental program that's taking intermediate athletes and moving them into RX. But then, Mike, to your point, we also took 20 athletes that didn't make semifinals before in a group program and moved them into a semifinal platform, which is just unbelievable. And another thing that other programs aren't necessarily doing, and I'll just, maybe I'm the only one that has a big enough ego to say that, but like that's just reality. Like I've looked around at programs, I've followed other programs in the past, or I just will see what other people are doing, and they don't have an intermediate path like what Mia's building out for us. And they certainly aren't taking these raw athletes and then building progressions that allow them to get over that hump, which is, it's tough to do, right? Like Max talked about taking a person from 10th to 4th in the games. Obviously, that's probably the hardest thing to do, but taking someone that's a bubble level athlete and then refining all those skills, especially in a group program, and moving them into a semifinal level, and then also for them to perform at semifinals is, that's like high level stuff that we're doing. And I think that's something that people should look at and say, okay, let me actually experience a program that's progressive as opposed to it just being Metcon mashup every single day of the week.
Yeah, and to kind of counter the no bull ad,
what's the noble ad?
No tomorrows. There are tomorrows.
It's all about tomorrow.
I want to push athletes to be at their best in this present time, but I care about their future in the sport. And I think if you're cramming this progress and without any disregard of what it's doing for the athlete's longevity, that's a mistake. And that's something that we put a lot of thought and process into with developing our off-season programs, which is kind of where we're at right now, right? It's super easy to finish up quarterfinals or semifinals where you're at and just be like, all right, let's just hop back on the hard Metcons because you're seeing everyone else do that on Instagram. But we're not doing that right now, right? We are running good progressions. We're allowing people to kind of develop the things that actually held them back, but also, too, making sure that there's actually space between seasons so that you can have a really good career like someone like Travis Mayer, who is just getting better. Yeah. What a weekend. That was awesome.
With 4 kids.
I know.
A family, a job. It's impressive.
Yeah, he's done an awesome job. I was thinking about the professional athletes of the sport almost sometimes give developing athletes the wrong model for how to look at things, because they are, even though, Travis and Noah will have these changes in the volume and rhythm of the season and they will go into a down cycle, their down cycles of training are still they would still probably kill most normal RX athletes.
For sure.
So they're deloading, but their deload is just like a little bit less intensity, a little bit less Metcons, but they're still getting stronger, building capacity. And they do this for years at a time. That's what a professional athlete is. It's like try to get to peak performance and then stay there at high pressure moments throughout the season for as long as you can. So semifinals ends, and if they don't make it, people are already in Madrid championships where it's like, okay, well now you got another 12 weeks to go. And you kind of have this rhythm of your off seasons become 2 or 3 weeks and then you're ramping back up into competition. But from a longevity standpoint and from a developmental standpoint, that should only be taking place when you're now at that highest level in a professional athlete and that the window's this long that you can hold it for a couple years.
Yep.
For most other people, it's like, okay, well, if you're let's say your goal is making the games in 8 years. It's like, okay, well then be patient because you're not going to be there for another 8 years. You should take time to reflect and say, I need to get better at this, this, and this. Go in, build your fundamentals, and then come back into the next season peaked. And that rhythm, I think, is what allows you to get better over time and not break yourself by just constantly be hammering stress all the time in your system.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this could actually turn into a
podcast.
like a longevity programming podcast. But let's talk about some of the updates with this new cycle.
Yeah, I think it leads us perfectly into the off-season updates that we have. And I think the coolest and the newest one that we have is we're adding a new path. New path.
Bonus path.
Just keep saying it the rest of the
bonus.
For $0.
For $0, no one has to pay for that. It's
Now
completely
included.
free to you. It'll be included starting June 27th, which is the start of this new cycle. It is a movement and mobility path. Essentially, it gives you access to 5 training days, 5 movement mobility training sessions each week that focus on, let's say, squat positions, overhead positions. Maybe you want to develop a pistol. Maybe you want to have better handstand walking and you're an intermediate, but your handstand or your just positions overhead suck.
Yeah.
This is for you. And also just for those maybe that have good positions, but need a way to calm themselves down after a training session, it will be a really good thing to add.
Let's talk about who's writing this.
Well, yeah, hold on. I also want to say, and this makes me super happy because I've been trying to convince people to do movement mobility, and generally most of my athletes would be like, I hate this, the focus. But people were actually asking for this because they saw it in the fitness path and they're like, oh, I did these and they were super beneficial. And so to those people, I love you for wanting to continue to develop your positions better.
I usually always notice a pattern when people start asking for that stuff. It's like 2 or 3 weeks too late. Their performance and it's on kind of downturn, and they're starting to get a little banged up. So now they're reacting and they're like, I really think I need to start doing this. And I'm like, yeah, should have done that a month ago. So Kyle Habdo is writing it. He's a physical therapist. He works with people on site all the time. He does manual therapy. He writes programs. He's a coach. So he actually put together a really good package, and I'm excited to roll it out into the program so that everyone can do it. It's, again, like Brandon said, it's 5 days a week. It's not like a hard training session. It's movement work. So it's intended to help you improve positions that just take more time.
Yeah, I think for people that might not understand what quote unquote movement training is, think of it like some of the accessory work that we would put into RX or into the elite or into the intermediate. But instead of the accessory work being focused on like a big muscle belly or on a transition into a skill, it's focused on optimizing how the joints need to function to get you into the positions. So it's just a little bit more like biomechanically oriented, which is just oftentimes it's slower. There's more stretching, there's breathing, and it's just a different type of training stress that is generally super beneficial to athletes that are training hard all the time, but also when they're going into like kind of off-season cycles where it's not as much intense on the joints.
Yeah, and I would say it's a great option too. Like, you don't have to do it while you're in the gym. Go home, relax, eat your dinner, and then pull it up. It's something that's right there on your app, and then you can follow everything that you can do, from your bedroom.
We call it Rehabdo.
Rehabdo by Habdo.
Yeah, and one of the other things too is like this could be a substitute for the program that you're paying for. A lot of people are paying for these online movement mobility programs, and instead of doing that, now you're saving a cost by just following it in the WattUp or TTT Complete app.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Very thrifty.
Yeah. So the other thing, Mike, talk about what else we have coming up.
Summer Sizzler's coming back.
Summer Sizzler!
Chris is cringing that we're still doing
No, I
Summer
think Chris
Sizzler.
is fired up when we met about it, and we're like, should we bring it back this year? And we're like, we can't just let the Sizzler go.
Yeah, it's such a good name.
Yeah, it's still sizzling.
So we're going to have that the week before the games. We will have a weekend competition, which will be just like last year, our Super Summer Sizzler. Is that what we're going to call it, or is it just Summer Sizzler now?
Super Summer Sizzler.
Super.
Yeah.
But
But
It's
it's
SSS
Sizzler for short.
by TTT.
Yeah. So, I guess for those new to the program or that are just kind of like hearing about us and kind of, watching this video and figuring out what kind of training we do, we like to have internal competitions within the WattUp leaderboard, which is our online app. So what we like to do is basically every block or so, depending on where the season's at, we'll create a competition to do. We think it's important to have some touches on hitting, comp style workouts throughout the year, but it's not also with the intent of it beating you down necessarily, and it's not going to completely derail the training progressions that we're working on. It's tough, it's fun, it's challenging. You've got the whole leaderboard to stack up against, but Monday the next week you're going to get right back into training.
Yeah, we have the throwdown that generally will cross over the divisions, but for the most part, intermediate athletes are training a specific way with modifications. RX athletes are training a specific way, and then elite athletes have little changes, modifications, increases in weights. So a lot of time throughout the year, there's just not synergy. So these competitions are basically like our community builders and give you that kind of opportunity to really put your focus on doing something like a quarterfinals where there's multiple tests and you have to be intense.
Yeah. I think the next big announcement is the improvement of the prize purse this year. If you finish the Sizzler, you get a sticker that says, "I survived the 2022 Super Summer Sizzler." Congratulations, friends.
Is that real?
Yeah. No, I don't know. You know what? We said it. We need to make it. Yeah. I survived the Sizzler. It sounds like a weird water slide at a park.
So also all of our paths are syncing back up. As Max just alluded to, there are obviously some differences between all of them, right? Masters train a certain way, RX does, intermediate, elite, but the template will be relatively similar, and then obviously we'll kind of shoot off from there. But the big structure, I think we would start with RX, talk about strength, I'll talk about the CrossFit.
Yeah, so I'll just go into the details of strength progressions this cycle. So last cycle we ran pretty intensive squat progressions. We did like a hatch style setup for several weeks. We saw a lot of improvements. This cycle, we're going to kind of change gears a little bit. We're going to make the squat focus more like percentage based, auto regulated day by day. And then we're going to put more focus on higher percentages with clean and jerk and snatch. So we did a lot of technical work the last cycle, which is good. Again, it being like, an off season focus, you have to have time to work on positions and make sure that you're kind of like getting rid of the bad habits and patterns, with it now being a time where you have space to actually work on those things instead of feeling rushed to always like have to max out. And anytime you go to max out, when you're trying to like get rid of these bad habits, you basically just like start shortcutting the progress. So anyway, now we have time to start pushing percentages again with the heavy lifts on snatch and clean and jerk. So Mondays, clean and jerk front squat. Tuesdays, gymnastics work, with a mix of some of the CrossFit movements you're going to see. You're going to see like weighted wall walks. You're going to see weighted pull-ups, strict handstand push-up progressions, GHD sit-up progressions. So trying to actually develop those skills. It's going to be a little bit of a lower intensity day because Monday and Wednesday are going to be a little bit heavier. Wednesday is going to be heavier overhead work. Friday, snatch, back squat focus. And then Saturday, deadlift and bench. Pretty strict linear progressions there. So we didn't do a lot of strict linear progressions like we did with the squat last cycle on deadlift and bench. So we're actually going to put the focus on that on Saturdays this cycle.
I don't want to hop in before you do your CrossFit, but with deadlift and bench specifically, especially with the total that came out this year in quarterfinals, having big numbers in those two lifts is a huge competitive advantage. Like people will take 70 pounds on the field with a big deadlift or 70 pounds on the field with a big bench. And conversely, if you're low on that, it really kills your strength total. So it's a good thing to add back in. It's probably something that 2-3 years ago, we probably undertrained really until Linda came out in semifinals.
Yeah, I mean, it was just out of necessity, right? Like we paid attention to what are most of the lifts that are commonly tested, and it's like snatch, clean and jerk, front squat, back squat. So, like occasionally you saw the total, but you never saw it in a competition format where it was like, okay, you got to be good at all three of these. So, yeah, I mean, anytime we write our training cycles now, we have focuses on some of the big lifts, and then we have secondaries, but they're all getting hit throughout the cycle in some format. So even if it's, one cycle is not going to be working to heavy bench all the time or doing like max effort days, you're going to have speed work once a week in some format, just to make sure that we're not going through like long training blocks without actually doing any of the lifts.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the CrossFit will be very similar. Oh, go ahead. You're pointing.
I did. And you go ahead. I'll come back.
I'm so sorry, Mike. Please forgive me.
I was just going to say we could talk about elite, but we'll cover elite.
Yeah, I'll do
last.
CrossFit. Yeah, cool. Yeah, CrossFit the structure will be very similar across all of the paths. Obviously, again, there's going to be some tweaks between elite, masters, and intermediate from what I'm going to say with RX, but you'll see the similar template. So for Mondays, it's going to be an A and a B week. So basically, your odd weeks are going to be one thing, your even weeks will be another thing. Is your ear getting hot?
Yeah, Mike has a hot ear.
He pops that thing off all the time. Zoom in on him, Chris, when you get a chance. It'll be squat endurance days on Mondays. So on the A weeks, or the first week, third week, fifth week, so on and so forth, those odd weeks, it'll be bilateral squatting. So things like wall balls, thrusters, so on and so forth. On the even weeks, the B weeks, you're going to see more unilateral work, but mostly it's going to be lunge focused and different variations or different planes, because now we've seen overhead, we've seen front rack, maybe a mix of a front rack and an overhead, like they did the regional style back in 2017, I think. So you'll see all of those different variations, as well as some different variations maybe going side to side, just to make sure that we're opening up our squat positions. On Tuesdays, we actually are going to do one of the endurance path workouts from the endurance from the elite path, which is a 20-minute max watt test on the C2 bike. So some people call that an FTP test. The difference here is that we're not going to train true functional threshold power in our training sessions. It's going to be a little bit more lower aerobic power, so it's not going to be as intense as we will get when we get closer to the actual season. It's still a really good progression. I've done those before. I improved by a lot. So if you stick to those progressions, you'll go 20-minute test on June 28th, and then you'll do it again in August, and you will improve as long as you're following those progressions. Then on Wednesdays, it's going to be a mixed session of gymnastics and mixed upper body pulling gymnastics with barbell cycling. There we go. I got it.
That's like classic CrossFit.
Classic CrossFit, yeah. So you're going to see all kinds of different variations, but there will be a bias towards one of the tests that's in the Summer Sizzler, which after you do a couple weeks, you'll kind of get a feel for what that may look like.
Don't tell them.
It's something that everyone's done in the past.
Oh, everyone?
Everyone's been in the
No more. No more.
Yeah. Everyone that has been in the secrets. Program. And then on Fridays, it's going to be upper body pressing endurance with a strict handstand push-up bias, but you'll see some deficit work, some deficit kipping handstand push-up work. It's still going to kind of lean more towards the bias that we saw in the quarterfinals this year, because that really crushed some people that weren't great at handstand push-ups, especially under fatigue with something like the overhead walking lunge. So you're going to see some different variations. We've been working on that, and I think people have improved, but it's just something that, like, it's such a big hole for so many people in the sport, and that could be one workout where you're in quarterfinals, you crush all the other ones, but then you get 2,000th on one workout and you can't get into semifinals. Or if you're in the intermediate and you're trying to move up into the top 10%, you can't have that cost you. And then obviously on Saturdays, it's going to be our throwdown, which is kind of more our random CrossFit. There's going to be a bunch of different tests. And the cool thing that we do is all the coaches write those. So basically I send out an email. This is kind of a cool behind the scenes, and every coach gets to write one of the throwdowns, and then we rotate through those. We just obviously make sure that they fit into the template. But I think it's a really cool way to get some
interesting ones I saw come back in the email chain.
Yeah,
I love
an interesting one you wrote.
Which one?
Don't say it. It may be in there.
The one with the things.
All those things. One of the other things, too, I know that I'm going for a while here, but there's an option each day for both RX and Elite for what I'll call extra credit work. So on Mondays throughout the cycle for 10 weeks, or really 9 weeks of the cycle, there's extra credit ring muscle up progressions. And then on Wednesdays, there's extra credit handstand, GHD, double under progressions. And then on Fridays, there's extra credit pistol progressions. A lot of those are not necessarily intense. It's more focused. It's a higher level progression than maybe what you'd see in intermediate with what Mia's focused on.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it basically is kind of dictated based on your skill level. So for the Elite, they're going to do more volume, a little bit more intensity, because they don't have a bottleneck in those movements. But maybe for someone that's not as great at the handstand walking, it's almost auto-regulated where they can only get so far because it's obviously maybe on the minute,
like
or
a
it's
time
set.
cap.
Yeah,
or something,
it's set so that they can practice the movement, but they're not necessarily crushing themselves. And the same thing's true for the pistols and the ring muscle ups.
Yeah, I get a lot of positive feedback from more advanced athletes that consistently hit lower intensity EMOMs through the week, right? Like they obviously still hit a lot of training volume and like hitting hard, intense Metcons, but it's good to have sessions where you can just focus on moving, breathing. You're not just doing drills, so you're more engaged. And it's just a little bit faster time-wise, but it allows them to just maintain touches on the movements and speed throughout the week.
Yeah. So that is the RX CrossFit. We're going to jump over to the table. Mia, you're finally at the table today. What's intermediate doing?
Is this like
Place at the table.
Thanksgiving? I'm out of the kid table.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
adult
Was
table?
that
You
Latimer?
graduated. Yeah. Yeah, from the
say?
program.
Yeah.
There's a
just
movie
a
called The
great
Program
movie.
back in the day about football, and there's a crazy juice head guy who just like would smash his head into the helmets and scream. And one of the things he said was, "I earned a place at the table," because
Yeah.
he became a starter. So
Yeah.
you're now a starter. You got a place at the table, Mia.
Just do it one
You came
time.
off the
Yay.
bench.
Oh, man. I can't wait to see comments on who knows what
know.
we're talking
Oh,
about.
yeah.
It's so
All right, so
classic.
intermediate path, the best path. Just kidding, but really. So we spent last cycle building our volume tolerance for all the gymnastics movements. For last cycle, this cycle, and the next cycle, we pull the gymnastics movements out of the CrossFit style Metcons, and we're doing them in isolated training progressions to help you get better at them, which is kind of what we touched about at the beginning of the video. So this cycle, we're going to start layering in some fatigue, and it's going to be mostly breathing aerobic fatigue, so not so much muscular limitations. So something, just to give an example, like last cycle we would do something like on the 90 seconds, 45-second max strict handstand push-ups so that you are just building your capacity on them. This cycle, you'll see something like you're doing running intervals into your handstand push-ups. So you're working on being able to do those under some aerobic fatigue. We're still building volume tolerance, but now we're making it a little bit more complex. So same structure as last cycle with A week, B week, meaning that we have 4 skills on each week. So you're touching them every 2 weeks. And then of course we still have the Got None programs. Those are going to repeat. They're going to start over. So if you did them last cycle and you still got none, I feel you. I got none, had none for a really, really long time. You just got to keep at it. Trust me, keep doing them. They will work eventually. But if you got some and you're hopping over or you're bridging up, then you have some exciting progressions coming this cycle.
Yeah,
That's my
sorry,
goal.
not to cut you off, but I read Atomic Habits, and they had a really good analogy in regards to progress. And think about an ice cube being placed on a table. It's frozen, and let's say you increase the temperature by 1 degree every so often, it's still frozen. But until you hit that certain point of, above freezing or below freezing, it's going to start to melt. But you don't notice that progress until you hit that point. So I think the gymnastic skills and developments are a lot like that, very similarly. So you have to keep putting progress in, and even though you didn't hit that one point, it's going to come if you just keep making that marginal progress.
For sure. Something that I'm always telling my one-on-one athletes is a bad day of gymnastics training is still 1 day closer to your whatever you're trying to achieve. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And that's going to happen. You're not going to see progress every session. You're not going to hit those aha moments every session, but you are taking a step towards it each time you work on it.
Yep.
The elite is pretty similar to what was said in the RX in terms of what the progressions and the styles are. There's just some minor changes. The major one being that there's more volume. So we have 3 sessions. And in the off season, I like to encourage elite athletes you have your strength, your CrossFit, and your kind of cyclical as your 3 sessions throughout the day. And you can kind of mix and match those sessions to build your off season. So if you're an athlete that knows, man, I need to put 20 or 30 pounds on all my lifts, but anytime there's an endurance thing, I'm in the top 3, you might actually in your off season want to pull some of that endurance back and just do the CrossFit and the strength. Or if you're a little bit burnt out from the intensity of CrossFit, you might want to take the strength and the cyclical and kind of have those be the base of your training and just mix and match everything else. For everyone that wants to do all of the volume, basically the additions are to the strength, we added a little bit of accessory work and just barbell cycling to the progressions Mike already explained. Some minor changes to CrossFit, like Tuesday, Brandon said, was one of our cyclical sessions. So we added an extra CrossFit session on that day. And then the cyclical is built into the 20-minute FTP test. Brandon said 2 running sessions, a rowing session, and
Swimming.
And 1 swimming session. Thank you. So that's basically what the elite path is. Now, for the elites that made the games, we already had some people that are in the games. They're obviously doing their kind of own one-on-one stuff and might jump in a little bit, but we're pretty much designing it now for this is your off season for the 2023 season. So that's where we are with elite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think let's talk a little bit too about who should follow elite because.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah, that was,
Why don't you go
ahead.
ahead and say it?
No, I was going to ask him, so you go ahead.
Yeah, Max, we see this often. We want people to progress into an elite stage. So the question is, I want to be elite. Do I follow the elite path?
Yeah, I would say that you should be very close to qualifying for semifinals as an individual or a team member if you're following it. We've talked to a couple people that are RX level athletes in that they're, maybe behind 1,000th place in the North American quarterfinal and they need to get way stronger. They aspire to be elite, so they're doing the elite path, but that's really actually probably making it harder for them to accomplish their goal because they're doing too much volume to get stronger and build skills. So I don't have a cut line that says you have to be exactly here, but you should be relatively well developed in the sport, like 3 to 5 years of consistent training, already able to do everything, maybe barring like 1 or 2 advanced skills. Like maybe you can't do pegboards or you can't do strict muscle ups or your legless rope climbs break down really quickly.
Yeah.
If you have that kind of like one little gap that keeps you away from calling yourself an elite, I think that puts you into that category if you're striving for it. But if you know you're far away, my recommendation would be to take the RX path, and then if you want, just cherry pick a little bit of the volume from elite or maybe one of the fitness paths.
Yep. Yeah, well said.
And then the last path is our master's path, which will also sync back up with RX, intermediate, and elite. The one thing that's different, and I've talked about this on the master's videos, is that we will continue on with our hatch progressions because we are actually 5 weeks behind on those because of the nature of the off or the in season now going into the off season for masters.
Long season.
Yeah, it was long. So if you are jumping into the program, you'll be jumping into a hatch program. The CrossFit will follow a similar template, and then there's some extra credit work each day for masters. A lot of that's going to be movement and mobility work, and then some options too for extra cyclical work for those that already are very strong but need some extra conditioning as well.
And
where does that lead us next?
Well, that's all the compete programs. So
Yep.
that's basically everybody whose training skew is 100%. I want to compete in the open, quarterfinal, semifinal, CrossFit Games season structure. We also have training programs that are for fitness that are just for people that want to get bigger, stronger, faster, more endurance, or just do a more simplified version of non-competitive specific CrossFit. And some people who follow Compete actually get the complete program, which is basically all of the programs that we're describing, and use like a mix and match style. They might do like the intermediate strength progressions for skills, and then they might do bodybuilding or cyclical endurance. So you guys want to just talk about, we can just briefly run through kind of what this cycle is for bodybuilding and endurance?
Yeah, sure. So bodybuilding is a path created in the fitness program that is intended to have just pure strength training, right? But not with the intent of like a ton of Olympic lifting work. It's basically a program that's going to be a lot easier on the joints and allow you to really focus on growing more muscle mass. Also to a little bit lower stress in terms of like training intensity. Like some of the sessions are difficult and challenging, but it's not going to beat you up like a CrossFit session would if you're someone who just doesn't respond well to that. So each day is just a good mix of movements, variety, and we change it per cycle. But this cycle is going to have a focus of one heavy lift progression per day, and that's going to be more of like an absolute strength style lift. So like a slow lift. Previous cycle was more focused on like more time under tension, longer tempo, that type of stuff. So this one, we're actually going to have one heavier lift per day. And then we're still going to have an overload focus on lower body work 3 times a week. Last cycle was 3 upper body days a week. So this cycle will be 3 lower body days. You'll see things like split squats, a lot of banded work, again, like tempo variations, just getting in a lot of different movements to make sure that all the joints are getting challenged in different ways, but more with a focus on growing mass. So not just like an accessory program, but a little bit higher intensity so that you can actually grow some or increase body weight and actually get stronger.
You guys asked me who's this for in the elite, and when I think of our bodybuilding program, I think of there's certain people, like whatever disposition they have or kind of like how their bodies are set up, they go into CrossFit and they really struggle to deal with the Olympic lifting speed and positions because they're just really dynamic, really explosive movements that require you to have deep end ranges, and their joints end up getting kind of just burnt out, and then they can't figure out how to do strength work because that's kind of the only skill that they have.
Yep.
Bodybuilding as kind of a strength discipline, almost like if you just look out at the market, has a lot more longevity. You don't see that many 50-year-old people that are fucking burying snatches at over body weight.
Yep.
And you don't see many high-level power lifters that are like moving really big weights and kind of looking good in their motion. But there's 70, like Jack LaLanne was a famous person who lifted weights for years into his 90s. And I think bodybuilding just as a discipline just has more longevity. So that can kind of be like a, an avatar. If you're getting into CrossFit and you're kind of dealing with that type of stuff and the competitive aspect is a little bit challenging, that can either be an off season, like, hey, get yourself healthy, or it could just be like, hey, this is how you strength train in a way that's just going to be easier for you to tolerate for a long period of time.
Yeah, I like it. I like using it as like time between hard strength cycles because I don't necessarily want to tell someone to just stop strength training while we're like in a deload of doing a heavy powerlifting phase or Olympic lifting phase. I still want them to maintain their mass and not, atrophy. So this program is fantastic for that. Like you'll get stronger, you'll feel healthier, and you'll be able to go back and attack the more priority-based strength sessions that you have down the line. So we see a lot of competitive athletes, CrossFit athletes, using this as like deload weeks and time to back off.
Yeah, I'll just say that I've used it myself, and it's a great way. To your point, Mike, I'll do maybe some hard strength sessions that are in compete, and then there are times where I go to bodybuilding for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, and it's a great way for my joints to feel better, and then also to be able to jump back in and not have issues when I do want to do something competitive.
Is that how you got your guns?
You better believe it.
I thought you got them from holding your children.
That too, man. It's actually harder to hold a child than do a bicep curl for sure.
I can tell by your face you were holding in a joke.
I know. He
sounds
doesn't- No.
I can't tell if it was holding a fart or a joke.
I haven't let them fart out yet.
Do it, but next to Mia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the endurance path, there's 2 rowing days, 1 running day, 1 swim day, and then there's a cool partner day, which is something that, if you've been in our program for a while, last year we had a partner Saturday workout in the endurance path, and people loved that. So we're going to bring that back. Becky's riding those, and I've already looked at it. It looks awesome. I probably will pull Jordan into doing a couple of the partner workouts with me. The rowing days are structured really, it's a cool setup where one day's more technical based. It's like learning how to actually drive through with your legs and then your back and your arms, playing around with drag factor settings and various stroke rates, which for some people, maybe they don't like. But if you want to get better at rowing, I think it's a really good place to start. And then the other day is more like a true tester day or training day where you're actually doing some intervals. The running is going to be track based, which I think is nice, instead of it just being like, go and run in your backyard. If you have a track, we actually can do some varied distances that way. And then
My athletes hate when I tell them to run in their backyard.
My backyard's so small.
Well, in your neighborhood, go to a track. It's a cool way to actually measure your
shuttle
times. Yeah. And then the swim day is going to be more technical focused, but with some fun stuff every single day. So we'll start with a 10-minute technical piece, which basically is learning actually how to swim, because most of us don't know how. But then the majority of the session, because I know most people just want to get in the water and sweat and breathe a little bit, will be a fun swim session with some progressions each week.
Some cannonball days.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I do. And then in the 60 program, this is our true progressive program that's more based for the fitness athlete, someone that doesn't want to be competitive but still wants to be in the CrossFit space. There's CrossFit-based movements, there's strength progressions, but in a 60-minute window. There's going to be 2 strength focuses, 2 RM bench press and then a 3 RM deadlift, which I think, to Mike's point earlier, we're talking about powerlifting, how important that is in the sport. It's also important just to stay healthy long term. And the general training focus is going to be deadlifts, toe to bar capacity, and a Metcon on a Monday. Tuesdays will be upper body strength and then some erg sprints on that day. Wednesday is going to be conditioning only, which I think has been a really good split for 60, is 2 hard strength days, a conditioning day. Friday is going to be bodybuilding with a press focus, and then Saturday will be squatting strength with a Metcon.
Yeah. It's just nice having a day where I'm not going to have to put a lot of time into setting up the strength work, going in and just knowing today is just a Metcon focus. Yeah. It's always good, a mental break.
The other thing too I wanted to point out with 60, when you get into the program, it's all set out for you. So it tells you exactly how long each piece should take. I know that one of the complaints in other programs I've seen is, you said it was going to be 60 minutes, but it's taking me 90 minutes or 2 hours. Well, this program says from 0 to 10 minutes, this is what you're doing. From 11 to 18, this is what you're doing, so on and so forth. So if you follow it, you should be done in that 60-minute window.
Yeah, it's really an opportunity to give you essentially a virtual CrossFit class.
Exactly.
And the realization we had is that, and you'll hear a lot of top level CrossFitters say this, is that training to become a CrossFit athlete and training to use CrossFit as a methodology just to be fit are 2 different things. Yeah. And what we found is with competitors, an hour is kind of a joke of a timeline to try to become a competitor. It might take some elite competitors 45 minutes to warm up to hit a max snatch. Yep. So if you say, okay, well, we have snatches as your A, and then we have back squats as your B, and then we have a Metcon, if you try to tell them to get that done in an hour, it's just
no chance.
Impossible. So they end up doing extra work. And so what we decided is okay, well, let's make a fitness program that's not geared towards trying to be competitive, to do 100 kipping handstand push-ups in a Metcon with squat snatches and handstand walking and these high-level skills, and kind of make it a more accessible, more 1 hour to be well-rounded fit. Strong, healthy, breathing, good movement, combination of CrossFit stuff, in and out in an hour, but no promises.
And happy.
Yeah, maybe, and happy. And just no promises that you're going to crush a competition, because that's not the same preparation, but the promise that there's a well thought out program that can help you just get bigger, stronger, faster in a more reasonable way if you're not an athlete or a competitive athlete.
Yeah, love it.
Boom. That's all our programs. The new cycle starts June 27th, and this will run through the week of the 22nd of
Yep.
August. Is that correct?
Yep.
So we have some awesome things. Summer Sizzler and the new movement and mobility path. I think that's a really big selling point. And that's something that all of you should start doing, especially if you're bad at the squat or the
Here-
overhead position.
The date of the Sizzler. We didn't say that.
Yeah, it's the week before the game. So it's the week
Week
of
of the 25th.
July 25th.
It's the weekend of the 25th.
Are you guys gonna do the Sizzler?
I'm
Are you
gonna
gonna
watch-
sizzle?
I'm going to
Yeah.
watch Mike do the sizzle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm gonna do it.
Good.
Yes.
I'm in.
If Mike talks enough trash,
Masters
I'm gonna do it.
division.
What?
No.
Yep.
Oh. I was like, what? I thought we already talked about that. You're gonna do the Masters.
I'm going to do
division.
the Masters Sizzler.
Oh.
Yep.
Did we get everything? We got a thumbs
Chris
up.
gave us
All
the
right.
thumbs.
Everybody who's listened, thank you very much. Peace. See ya.